Bagseed Chronicles is a podcast about cannabis.
I was in Dollar General and I found this, and it'll just be a picture of a dude holding a giant stalk of weed that blew off somewhere.
Hi guys, welcome to the Bagseed Chronicles. We've got a pretty cool show for you. I've got a quick garden update, and then I will be having an interview with Evan and Evan alone from the Smokin Okies. So I've broken up the dynamic duo of the Smokin Okies, and I've interviewed them separately. So today is the interview with Evan, and then I'm going to have Corporal Chronic back on the show, followed by another Marine, Brandon, from the Smokin Okies. So we've got some great interviews coming up for you, and if you enjoy the grow content or the interviews you hear on the Bagseed Chronicles, please share it with a friend, because the best bag seeds, as we know, are the bag seeds that you share with a friend. So let's get to that garden update, and then on to that interview with Evan from Smokin Okies, Oklahoma's premier cannabis podcast. Uncle Dig's garden update. Hi guys, it is July 31st, 2021. I am in gardening zone 8B, and this is a garden update. We have thankfully received a little rain over the past few days where I am at, so the smoke has calmed down quite a bit. The autoflower garden is complete. I got 20 grams off of one of the candy cane and 23 grams off of the other candy cane. I, of course, did not weigh the trim, and said trim was such a lovely smoke, I completely forgot how many joints I got out of it. I haven't been able to sample the flower yet, as it isn't done curing yet, but I will keep you posted. The first tangerine dream plant hits me kind of like a dreamy indica hybrid. It won't necessarily ruin my workday, but I have found myself easily distracted. I have sampled some of the Tangerine Dream from the second plant. It is a traditional sativa leaner with an inspirational, uplifting high that not only helps with your aches and pains, but makes you feel inspired. The Afghan maths are both harvested and hanging. I am almost certain that I will be able to trim one of them tomorrow. I will let y'all know on yields. Something to think about as far as yields in the outdoor garden. I will approximate, but I will never be able to tell you exactly how much flower I grow outdoors, because I don't care enough to buy a big-ass scale or whatever. It's fucking weird telling you how much weed I have as it is. The outdoor garden is doing well. The CBD Dutch treat that is flowering is in week 2 and really starting to bulk up. I look forward to chopping her down in early September. The plant, however, while beautiful, is not particularly fragrant. I'm looking forward to it smelling more, hopefully around week 4. The other 2 CBD Dutch treat are still in veg, and both are taller than me in their smart pots. They both have a nice faint sativa citrus smell to them right now. The Alien OG is going to grow over my head and is still vegging, as well as the Strawberry Dream bag seedling. Neither one is putting off much of a smell. The 2 Star Killer Femmes are both in week 1 of flower. One looks super healthy and happy and gorgeous and luscious, and the other looks kind of spindly and weird. But the flowers in both of them look good. The plant has been more of a challenge to keep happy. But they are starting to smell really good, like a weird like lemon pepper almost. I don't know. It's good. I'm not the best at describing smells, but it's really good. And the Black Domina are still in veg, but they appear to be stretching, and they are just starting to go over my head, and they are starting to smell already. I'm so excited. They smell like a really good, like peppery, kind of funky indica. And that's it. I hope that everyone is killing it in their gardens, and if we can, let's overgrow the world. Hi, guys. Welcome to the Bagseed Chronicles. Today, I'm interviewing Evan. Evan is an Oklahoma cannabis patient, activist, home grower, and amateur chef. He is featured on Oklahoma's premier cannabis podcast, the Smokin Okies. Welcome to the Bagseed Chronicles, Evan.
Thank you very much for having me, Dig.
How are you doing today?
Good, sir. I hope you're doing well as well. We just made the trip up from Lawton, Oklahoma, up to Oklahoma City to hang out with my co-host Blake for the day. So it's been kind of a hectic couple hours.
Well, I hope that after this, it kind of evens out.
Oh yeah, eventually.
So, I don't know how the weather is here. My voice may sound a little scratchy. The valley I live in is currently getting inundated with a little bit of smoke. It's not too bad yet, but the wildfires around here are really giving us a lot of smoke to breathe in right now. So if I sound a little scratchy, that's kind of what's going on.
You sound just fine, man. But I'm sorry to hear you're getting smoked on from the wildfires.
Oh yeah, I hear they got it out as far as New York a little bit from out here. The fires are so big.
Oh man, I haven't noticed it or heard of it. I'm gonna have to look into that when I get off here now, because you think I would get some.
Wind patterns are weird, especially once everything goes over the Rockies, for sure.
All right.
What are you smoking on today, man?
I have got two things. I have got my home grow, which is member berries from Ethos, and then I've got some golden lemons from a resident cultivation. I've been chiefing on both those this morning.
So your home grow, what was that strain again?
It was member berries. I want to say it was RX3 or RBX or whatever they say, 3 from Ethos.
Is that a cut or is that a seed?
It's a seed company. Oh, the seed, yeah, is Ethos.
So it's so you got this seed. Is it like more of an indica leaner or a sativa leaner? And I know we're kind of getting away from those. What I'm talking about is it more just like couch locky, or is it more like uplifting?
I would definitely classify it as a sativa leaning hybrid.
Okay, cool. When you grow that, are you growing that in soil or hydro or cocoa? What are you doing?
Well, I hate to kind of say this coming on your show of all shows, but I'm kind of a basic bitch with the gross stuff. So am I allowed to cuss before I just cuss?
Yeah, oh yeah, we're an explicit podcast. We can say all the things we want to say.
I was scrambling to remember a specific instance of cursing on your show, but I couldn't think of one. So thank you.
we really mix it in nice and gently. You know, it's important that when you go in really, really gently at first, so people don't get too offended, right? No, it blends into the background. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, see.
But yeah, it's now I forget what I was on about.
You said you were a basic bitch when you were growing. So what does that mean to you?
So it means I'm using like Happy Frog. I can't even tell you my newts because that's kind of my wife's end of things. I actually texted her to ask her. I know it's a 3-part system.
Okay.
But it's general hydroponics. It just hit me like a lightning flash.
Oh,
general hydroponics 3-part system.
Perfect.
And we're using Happy Frog.
I use Happy Frog too as part of my mix. I find that it's a really good light mix. Like because of my mix that I have been using, and I'm probably going to completely change soil mixes soon. I'm really interested in super soils, and I have a buddy who's going to send me a book about KNF, and I'm kind of curious about that. But what I'm not going to do is tell anyone that they're basic or because some of the best growers I know use Ocean Forest, from Fox Farms. I mean, like, a lot of times people find what works and stick with it. And for the longest time, the easiest soil that was tailored to our needs to find was Ocean Forest. It's from the Humboldt Nation, like it's Happy Frog. It's Ocean Forest. What is that? Fox Farms. Yeah, it's all
Fox
Fox
Farms.
Farms. Yeah.
Okay, yes, that's what we're using. Yeah, Fox Farms in specific, the Happy Frog, and it has worked out for us. We've only got, like, I would say it's 2 combined grows, but in truth 1.5 grows under our belt, and we're only slowly changing variables. And it almost seems, just from listening on your show and other forms of research, that the soil thing is something that is getting taken insanely seriously right now, and it's kind of a sub hobby unto itself that we're looking forward to diving into soon.
Yeah, it can be. And I'm starting to realize that, like, whereas the bottled nutrients that I've been using to amend my soil with when the soil runs out of juice are a little bit hotter. But like when you're using worm castings and stuff like that, it's much harder to like burn the plants, because there's a bit of soil biology has to break that stuff down first before the plant uptakes it. So it's not like the plant's just like, okay, it just goes right up it, like, with the chemical newts, you got to be careful, because the plant just takes it up, and then the plant's like, oh, oh God, the plant's like, what are you doing, man? That's too much. But sometimes it responds positively if you measure it right, because it's uptaking at an optimum rate, right? So that I don't cast aspersions on anyone who's found a simple way to grow that works. I think some of the best cannabis I've smoked has been grown with a very simplistic approach, i.e., mix a few worm castings in, a little bit of fertilizer that's like slow release. I've seen people do that and have really good success with it. And most of the best weed I've smoked kind of mixes the two approaches in kind of a hybrid sense. Like, they may not use all like chemical salt derived nutrients, but they may use one. Like they're like, for instance, my grow newt that I use is not considered organic, but 2 of my flowering newts are, but one of them's not. And then, oh, by the way, my CalMag's considered organic, but I'll tell you right now, it's not. I don't know how they get away with calling it that, but anyway. But I used to use liquid bone meal, which is organic.
Right.
So I'm of the opinion that if you're trying to find calcium, you're trying to find calcium, and I don't really care where you get it.
Right, there comes a line, kind of.
Right, yeah, and it's also a matter of cost. I'm trying to do this at home, so buying these nutrients, I'm going to have them for a long time if I buy them in bulk, and the chemical stuff's just a little more stable.
That's I'm trying to remember now. Oh, to be 100% clear with you, what I'm smoking on is from our previous home grow. Right now we have some lilac diesel autos going, if that plays into your question, eh?
Oh, that does. So you do like a sativa leaning hybrid for your medicinal needs.
Typically, yeah. In this instance, it was just that we wanted to experiment with autos and happened to have like 3 or 4 auto flowers laying out. But I'm happy that it was a sativa hybrid, certainly.
I encourage people to experiment with whatever genetics they have lying around. I don't, like, if you've got seeds and you don't have the money to spend on genetics, pop them. You pop more than you need, flip them, call the males, do it old school, and go for it, man. There's no reason not to, especially when you're dealing with Oregon laws, and I think Oklahoma laws. You can have a certain number of immature plants and a certain number of plants flowering. So if you flip, let's say you grow your 6 up to like a foot tall, and then you're like, all right, I'm flowering them, and then 3 of them are male. Well, then you just kill them, and then you pop 6, 3 more, and then you add those to the canopy, and you just continually move stuff into your flower tent. And as long as you don't have more than 6, you're golden.
You're legit. I think it is 6 and 6 here, if I recall correctly, as well.
Yeah, it's weird here. It's like I can have like 24 immature plants or something crazy, but then as soon as they get over 2 feet and or are flowering, and that and or is on purpose. The Oregon's laws are so like vague and hard to interpret on purpose, because wow. Yeah, but you see, here's the cool thing about Oregon. Like, I had a question about my like, if I were to take another card that was my wife, and I clarified it on the podcast, and I was able to, because I called the Oregon medical marijuana program, and a girl answered the phone, and I asked her the question, and she told me what the right answer was, and she even told me they would waive one of the card registration fees, since we're growing at the same site and we're part of the same immediate family.
Wow, you usually don't. Okay, I was saying usually government agencies aren't the ones to hook up like that, but it sounds like it's part of the rules. I spoke too soon.
Yeah, it's been interesting, and and our system, has a lot of the same problems that a lot of systems do, but in a lot of ways, I like that when you pay your fee, you're paying for at least somewhat of an infrastructure that's there to advise home growers, like at least
That's
what's
cool.
allowed. And so I really like to tout at least that part of our system. Like, hey, if you're not sure, like, dude, I went on the state of Oregon's website. I went to OMMP and I called the number and I was on hold for 5 minutes and I talked to a lovely young lady. I wish I'd gotten her name. And she told me the answer to my questions and explained some of the very like nitnoid stuff I was confused about.
That's super neat. My experience in Oklahoma, I've only had to call them a few times because I don't have anything extremely technical, and I can't speak for if a business owner were to call and ask for help. But at least as just a consumer, the times I've had to call them have kind of been not that. You mostly call the OMMA here to be told that the OMMA can't help you over the phone.
Yeah.
Alas.
Okay. That's that, and I think a lot of this is like there is still an element of like not kind of wanting to touch cannabis with a 10-foot pole by people who aren't like involved in it.
Mm.
And I think that attitude will slowly chip away as it's normalized.
Right.
And
Sure.
I hope and it's happening faster in the legal states I see like legalizing now than it did in some of the first places to go. It's almost like everyone's been waiting to exhale, and as soon as it's legals, everyone's like, "Oh, is he gone? All right, it's legal now." You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's super interesting to that point. How whenever I'm trying to think of a way to frame this, in the states that I've seen go legal, of course, it's always the people who were doing it, illegally up to that point before. So you have this really interesting industry of people who are, essentially in the state's eyes criminals like a week ago, but now they're legit business operators, and there's all this bleed over, and it's very interesting to see.
Well, and places like Oregon, you have had, and even Washington, although Washington's medical program has been destroyed, but like actively destroyed. Ours has atrophied because you can just go to the dispensary and buy weed or grow four, and a lot of people were able to meet their need with that. So they're like, "What do I need a card for? I'm not going to pay the state by." But a lot of people did stay with our medical program because it was allowed to continue. Washington State's was not allowed to continue, and I would advise Oklahomans not to allow your medical program to be done away with. It's very important that you keep it going, especially for people with chronic health conditions. They need more cannabis than you think, than you have a right to have an opinion about. So let's move on from this puritanical screeching Karen impulse to like hide the plants, like grow. I would like to see a world where people are growing, their auto flowers next to their tomatillos all over the country.
Super cool. We'll get there eventually. It'll swing by probably in this lifetime. It'll be an interesting road to get there.
And I know that you're like a big edible aficionado.
Yes.
What have you been enjoying as far as edibles recently?
Oh man. If you're wanting me to list off a couple brands, my big one out here in Oklahoma is the Zen Cannabis 150 milligram hybrid, which is far and away my favorite gummy around. I typically do gummies. Otherwise, if the budget's doing well, one given week, there are these things called hash caps they have out here now, which are essentially just activated rosin mixed with a little vegetable oil and put in a pill, and they hit about 113 milligrams a piece, and they will send you to space.
Woo! I like to make there were for a while allegedly I was making RSO in my backyard allegedly and putting it into capsules, and this was an experiment to be like, okay, if I take like 3 of these, I'm gonna trip super hard. That's not what happened. They just put me to sleep. But good medicine, very good for a sleep aid. So, but yeah, don't make RSO at home.
You know what? To your point, kind of, it, RSO to me is kind of its own thing, independent of cannabis. It's made from the cannabis plant, but if you hand me an RSO syringe and say that Zen gummy or hash cap, even if I get roughly an equivalent dose, the experience I get is going to be way different. I,
RSO is like truly like a cancer med.
right? Yeah, that's the serious stuff, and like more power to the people who need it and want to use it. Like I just, as somebody who takes it for like anxiety and mood problems more than pain, it's not something that
Oh
helps
yeah.
me.
So allegedly, whenever someone in my circle gets diagnosed with cancer, you know, some sort of contraption gets put out with a bunch of fans on the backyard, and I make a
Yep.
batch. But that's an old medically activisty thing, and I
Right.
advise y'all do your research about solvents and
Yes.
be safe and keep moving air around your shit, and maybe don't do it at all. Maybe if you can afford to, which I never can, but if you can afford to, go to a dispensary because you live in a legal state because you vote, and go buy an RSO thing and give it to your friend with cancer. Don't make it in your backyard.
It's a lot safer that way. The thing that I make, it's called FICO, which is essentially kind of the same idea of different take. It's a full extract cannabis oil, and
Yes.
it uses the same process. I'm sorry, a roughly equivalent process. It's not quite as complex, where you cook it up in alcohol and then you evap the alcohol. That's the way I do it anyway. And that can get like extremely dangerous. And in a lot of places, it's illegal to do any kind of evaporation in your home. So if you're worried about, following the law.
Yeah, it's definitely I would well see with the way that Oregon's medical laws are written, like I'm pretty sure I'm allowed to cook with it.
Right.
But yeah, I don't think they want me doing any kind of concentrates. I don't think they have a problem with like dry sift and like bubble hash or water hash because you're not. But what they really don't want is you using solvent because for the longest time, dude, and people still do it, but not as much of the extent as they used to. They would just blast like tons and tons of BHO through these big glass tubes in their backyards, dude. But they would do it in their garages, and then someone would light a cigarette, and that's all she wrote.
And that's the kind of shit that lets your power companies and your pharmaceutical companies lobby against cannabis in states that don't have it or want to expand it. Whenever we here in Oklahoma, whenever we put the referendum out, that was our power companies were putting out things saying, "Are you all ready for home weed chefs to use BHO and blow their garages up?" And they were like appealing to like firefighting organizations and shit. It was wild.
See, and look, I'm not gonna say that fires in concentrate manufacturing facilities don't continue to be a problem because periodically industrial factories catch on fire, and it's not just a cannabis problem. If I would like y'all to check out like y'all to check out the Texas chemical industry and how the last 4 years of deregulations have increased accidents in that industry, and then come for cannabis.
It's not to get too political on your show, but I keep seeing that trend in Texas. Kind of interesting.
It is interesting, isn't it? And here's my point with all this shit talking about Texas. Texas regulates cannabis, which in its unlit form is completely innate. It might be an allergen. Okay, that's how it's going to threaten you. But they don't regulate like certain like gasoline manufacturing byproducts to the same extent. So there's stuff that if like you catch the wrong whiff will kill you,
or you get cancer in several years, or
and then there's it's good. And then there's this plant that can provide so much help to people that they treat like it's like a radioactive tomato or something.
I've joked about this on Smokin Okies before, like routinely. I'm pretty active on Reddit, and I was active on the OK Marijuana Reddit. And literally on a weekly basis, man, people from Texas being like, hey, you live close to the border. You want to make some money, haha. And it's like, you feel bad for them because they're getting held back, and Texas is a trip.
Well, and Texas could have so easily gone the other way. And but it's been interesting anyway, let's not get into politics, but there's a lot of people moving to Texas that are keeping that state red.
I mean, and I moved to Oklahoma, even not agreeing with a lot of it politically for cannabis. So it wouldn't be hard to see. Yeah. I don't even know where I'm going. I just like talking shit about Texas because I'm from Oklahoma now.
Yeah, that's a pastime in Oklahoma. And I'm originally from Southeast Texas, and there's a part of me, and it gets smaller every year, that when you talk shit about Texas, like, it's hackles raise. But it's kind of silly at this point, because I left Texas when I was 18 and I'm pushing 35 now. So soon I'll be more of a citizen of the world than of Texas here in a couple more years.
I get that, man. 100%. I'm sorry for talking shit about your home state.
No, it's fine. They deserve it. They should legalize weed. Like, seriously, they go out into their backyards every summer, and it's 4th of July, and shoot guns in the air and brag about their freedom and drink their beer. And then they lock up people for smoking a plant. It's fucking stupid.
Alex Caruso got arrested from the Lakers, got arrested down there with like an eighth in his carry-on bag that he forgot about coming from California.
Oh, that's too bad. Here, guys, okay, so I know there's a few illegal states out there that like really don't give a fuck. Like, the cops aren't gonna fuck with you. Texas ain't one with you. Texas will bend you over and fuck you in the ass for half a roach. They will rape you to death with their law enforcement personnel for a fucking ounce. They are crazy. Do not, like, seriously, when you get ready to drive into Texas or go to Texas, like, seriously, if you're a pothead, look, listen, go through your bag like you're a cop looking for drugs. Go through it, because you might find a piece of cannabis, like a little budlet or a seed or something, that could get you into a lot of trouble in Texas, because they're crazy.
Oh man. Oh, it makes me nervous when I go, because I'm always worried about having a gummy wrapper or something. I mean, I live an hour from Wichita Falls.
Well, honestly, man, I feel kind of weird even driving in Texas, because like I smoke enough weed here. I go to Texas, even if I don't smoke weed at all, I still have levels of cannabis with THC in my blood that makes me an automatic DUI in Texas.
Yeah, and even if like somebody else hits you, like in Indiana, I'm assuming.
Yeah,
Same thing. That's
yeah,
wild.
they're gonna test me, and if they test me even if they hit me, they're gonna try to pin it all on me. Well, he was high, even when I wasn't. Because honestly, folks, if you eat an edible on Monday and then you get tested on Friday, you might be over the legal limit of blood. That's why blood limits are a problem. You're sober, but you've still got enough THC coming out of your fat cells to cause the law to think you're inebriated, because they're the kings of bad science when it comes to cannabis.
Oh yeah, that's really upsetting. Now you got my dander all up thinking about people getting screwed like that.
It's one of the main reasons we actually need to legalize. Patient rights is important and all that stuff, but it's to protect people. It really is.
I was very lucky too. Like I was tied up in worse stuff than weed, but even with that, living in Indiana for a long time, I think there are at least 4 or 5 times in my life where I probably should still be in jail just for having an amount of cannabis that I have here now. And it's no big deal. And it's just horrifying. It's kind of hard to fight that fuck you got mine attitude where, okay, I'm here now. Fuck you all, but you have to, because people are getting screwed elsewhere.
Yeah, and like, and that's what I think distinguishes is activists like you and me, like, from people who are just part of the culture. And I'm not going to cast aspersions on those people, but like, if I'm going to produce content in this space and and have an audience, I feel like at some point I have to say, hey, it's wrong the way that people who enjoy this plant are being treated in states where it's not legal. And in some states where it's legal, people are still being mistreated.
Oh yeah, dude. There's a guy in our Discord that was just talking about how he, for various reasons, hasn't been able to get a card. And he said, like, you only get $100 ticket for having weed, but they'll fucking get you whenever they want with it if you've got it. So this guy's got like 3 or 4 different $100 possession tickets in Oklahoma, just because he hasn't been able to basically scrape the money together to get a card yet.
And they're just keeping him out of the legal market by continually dinging him with those tickets.
That's a big part of it. Yeah, whenever you're low income, man, $100 is a lot of money.
Oh yeah, yeah. Like honestly, it can sink or swim you in a month
Yep.
if you're living check to check. People need to like realize that like if this is medicine, then you've got to have an ability for low income people to access it. But that's
Yes.
and that goes into a whole nother system about compassionate care and a private healthcare system and all that. And I don't really want to get into that. But I just worry that like it's not as hard or expensive to produce as most pharmaceuticals. And so people are excited about like a lower price, like 25 an eighth or whatever. But I'm going to be honest with you. Cannabis shouldn't be that expensive even. And
Yeah.
I think that once the price equalizes out, we're really going to understand what the industry is going to look like moving forward as far as size of cultivators.
It's interesting that you say that too, because 25 and eighth is here. My cap line is pretty much 35 and eighth, but that's for like good indoor that you can smoke on and you'll get high really well. If we could get down here to where 25 and eighth was the baseline, that would be pretty incredible.
Oh, and I'm not saying we're necessarily here either. I just
Sure.
think that like honestly, like for what it is, right? We're still paying a bit of a sin tax and a
Oh
bit
yeah.
of a taboo tax, and that's a bit insulting.
Mm.
Um, I think if you want to look at how sin taxes affect consumption, you only have to look as far as alcohol to realize they don't do
They don't
anything.
do shit. Yeah.
And so if they don't do anything to modify the behavior, so first of all, there's a judgment built into these high techs, right, with cannabis that's bad.
Yes.
I don't appreciate that, and I don't accept that.
That's a
And
real
I
fair
think
point.
and I think that a lot of people that in the rush to legalization, yeah, we got it legal. Now the push is no, 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 no. Now it's legal. So fuck you and your 13%. Fuck you and telling me I can't grow it in my backyard. Fuck you. It's legal. You can brew beer in your backyard.
Which
So
is
if you
still
can,
kind of, yeah, sorry.
yeah, yeah. And if you can brew beer in your backyard, you should be able to grow cannabis. Hell, in
Well,
some states, you can distill liquor as long as it's
Kentucky
under
probably.
like a certain amount, right? Like a couple liters.
Oh, I bet it's like a Georgia thing. Yeah, that's
I, I
you say
just,
that. I think of Georgia. Sorry.
I feel, I don't know. I feel like there's somewhere you can actually make like basically moonshine legally, as long as you make under a certain amount and your still is like under a certain like displacement or something. I don't know. I don't know how stills work.
It just seems like that's a much more dangerous, complex process during which things could happen. You get a contaminated batch where you got all this yeast brewing and shit. You can do all that and it's no problem. But yeah, like you said, growing this plant that, short of pesticides or something like that isn't going to fuck with you. It's kind of a really weird dichotomy.
Well, and honestly, with pesticides, I honestly, I encourage everyone, if they're worried about what pesticides to use, Oregon actually has a banned and approved pesticide list
Oh,
on
that's
their
cool.
website. Now, I'm not going to say it's perfect, but it's probably a good base to see like what's like probably safe and what's probably not.
Yeah.
So check out the OLCC website or the OMMP website, and look for their pesticide lists, because those are what are approved for pesticides use in Oregon. And I think Oregon's one of the better states for as far as pesticide testing. I'm not going to say it's the best, but it's one of the better ones.
That would be a good thing to have. We have recalls here sometimes occasionally. Well, no, my head jumped. I'm thinking more THC percentage testing than pesticide testing. So forgive me.
Yeah, that's fine. No, that happens a lot too. And that's a constant problem in the lab infrastructure in every legal state is when there's an incentive, like a financial one, to push your THC levels up, there's going to be a bad actor somewhere who's willing to do that for a price. And it's kind of endemic in that lab industry. And it makes me wonder what else they're fudging. I mean, they lied to us about Oxycontin and all that stuff.
Yep.
So they're and now they're fudging the weed numbers. I mean, should we be trusting these these chemists and these labs to even tell us what's in anything.
In Oklahoma, man, it's widely known that at least, I can't speak to the pesticide thing again. This is where I kind of got my wires crossed, but the THC percentages are totally not to be trusted here. They're one step shy of just complete fabrications, is what anybody will tell you.
Yeah, and I see that terp testing is common there too, and that's the number in Oklahoma that, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, I would probably trust that over the THC
Yes.
level.
I look at the terp percentage, like now I've been looking at the terp profile and like the nose of it. Like whenever I think everybody makes that mistake whenever they come here and get their card first, it's like, whoa, bro, it's 31% or whatever. But that doesn't mean anything, and it's probably not accurate anyway.
No, it's probably not. It might be, but it's probably not.
I will say, contrary to that, I typically don't like super high percentage outdoor indicas, but bar none, the best cannabis I have ever smoked was an outdoor, like 32% out here. So everything but that one.
There was I think it was like a Mr. Nice or something that had tested at like 31%. And it was an indica like that, and it was really good. But some of the best indicas I've had come in at 18 to 20.
That seems to be where they level out. Yeah. Like on average, but yeah, that's like 18 to 20s or typically what you see out of them here. One thing that makes me nervous, and I know you're not much of a dispensary buyer, but around here, you sometimes see these sativas with really high percentages, and it immediately makes you think, well, are these people ignorant of the process, or are they just trying to huck to people who are ignorant of the process?
Well, breeding has kind of gotten a little bit crazy. So they've come up with some really cool stuff. But I don't agree with all of what what the consensus is on what strains produce high THC. I think there's a lot of when you cut, but there's also there are a lot of hybrids now that express themselves with the long, spindly, stereotypical sativa leaves, and they have an uplifting woo, I'm ready to mow the yard kind of feel,
Yeah.
And then, but you smoke one and then you wait, and then it starts getting trippy, and you're tripping out, and you're like, whoa. And then you realize you just had a sativa that the only indica trait it took was to produce more THC. So I've seen sativa,
that's cool,
because people have been messing with it, and and they've been doing these hundreds of plant genetic selection runs to select these unique cultivars. And so sometimes they find something really special. And so I would push back on that a little bit. 5 years ago, or even 10 years ago, maybe I'd agree. But because everybody's been fucking everybody, and when I say that, I mean the plants.
Sure.
They express themselves in so many ways that don't make sense to the traditional way. But see, here's the thing I like about what I'm hearing out of Oklahoma. Y'all have a completely different scene than we do out here, so your genetics are a bit different. I'm hearing some names that are familiar, but I hear you and Blake talk about strains that I've never heard of. So y'all have your own breeders, y'all have your own genetic scene going on. So what I'm excited about, and why the one thing that federal legalization has made happen, is that there's truly regional weed scenes. Have you ever smoked anything called Afgoo?
No, I have not.
Yeah, it's an Afghan style indica that a lot here for a while was very popular in certain dispensaries, and I really enjoyed it.
Oh, I see. I've never heard of that, or that candy cane that you had. I'd never heard of that either.
Yeah, well, I had never heard of that until I bought those seeds. That was a shot in the dark.
Fair.
I did that thing that people tell you not to do, and trusted the description on the seed website.
Yeah.
And you know what? So far, Crop King hasn't lied to me yet. So
oh well, that's cool.
Yeah.
Good job, Crop King.
Yeah. And so yeah, and I don't like giving them too much free press, but Every plant I've grown from them has been very good home grow.
That's super cool. We've only messed with Ethos as far as sellers go because again we're so early in it. But then our other successful plant was just like a random Bagseed.
Well, for the
So,
longest time, most of my gardens were mostly Bagseed, and then what I
right.
called my insurance clones that my friends would give me on the like my a medical grower would have like an extra clone, and he'd give me an extra clone or something. And so
Mhm.
I'd have like one clone that I knew what it was, and then 4 or 5 seedlings that I had no idea. And then my wife was like, "Look, you spend all this money on nutrients and all this stuff. Why don't you buy some seeds? I hear you talking. Oh, I would love to grow this. I would love to grow that." She's like, "Hun, I know a pack's like $50, but each seed is $10. Like, just, because I'm cheap."
Right. No, I get that. I get that.
And I would pick these seeds out of this really good weed that people would give me or that I'd buy, and I'd grow it out, and it would be fire.
Mhm.
But I didn't know whether it was going to be a sativa leaner, an indica leaner,
Yeah.
a lot of times. But I got really lucky because a lot of the genetics that I was pulling seeds out of were like professional grade, like flower on the Oregon market that had been flowered to maturity and like hermed just a little bit.
Just a tiny bit. That's
And
what
so,
happened with ours that we got the seed from. Sorry.
and a lot of those are females. So it's been really cool.
That's super neat. I hope you can't hear the dogs in the background. I think some company came and they're yelping.
Oh, that's fine.
Right.
What I mean, what is a cannabis podcast without coughing and dogs barking
Right.
in the background?
And somebody being 10 minutes late this time. Sorry again.
Oh, you're fine. You're fine. So, what are you really excited about over the next couple months as far as the cannabis scene in Oklahoma is concerned?
We've got a few things. One thing I suspect you and Blake might have talked about because we just had a conversation about the same thing this morning, but pretty soon, apparently, Oklahoma is going to open the way to letting anybody from any state get a valid medical card here, which will be extremely useful. It'll kind of further our reputation as kind of an innovator in that space. B, it will let me give to friends and family who want to experiment with cannabis in a safe place without me having to worry about some legal repercussions. And C, it gets people from Texas to stop messaging me on Reddit. But
That's very cool. That's very cool because I know they already had, and we didn't actually talk about that. We talked about medical card reciprocity, which has always been a feature of your law. And so I just didn't. When on my last trip, I planned to Oklahoma. I didn't give myself enough time to experience your medical, because you have to like mail it off 30 days ahead or whatever.
Right.
And me and Blake actually talked about, if I ever do come out there again, when I visit family, I also might come on your podcast and talk about the experience of getting the card and going to a dispensary, because I'm from an established, market, and y'all are an established market, and kind of comparing and contrasting.
That would be super interesting to learn about because you all been around a minute. You told me, I believe it was 98 that you initially got medical.
Well, the state, yes, the state. Yeah. I have not been here that long.
Yeah, no, sorry. No, I just meant your state in general. My bad.
Yes.
And we're still, of course, fairly new. But it'd be interesting to see the market's evolved so much just in the year that I've been in Oklahoma. So in another year's time, if anybody from any state can come in and have a valid 2-year card, I think if we can keep it there, that would be a great change that staves off the, recreational problems.
Yeah. They definitely will. And I think it's been important, in Oklahoma, that if they're going to make it medical, that they make it accessible to anyone who wants to use it medicinally. And I think they've done an okay job of that. Not a great job, but an okay job.
They've done, just like you said, okay. And I know I've heard a million horror stories like yours where either you didn't get the paperwork in on time, or maybe the OMMA didn't get back in early enough, and because of that they don't get a card. And this would alleviate it, because hell, then everybody's just good for 2 years.
Yeah, and maybe that's what I do if I'm going to Oklahoma in the next, if I know I'm going to Oklahoma this after this harvest season, I'm going, I could just get that and then I'd be good.
And another thing, even closer to the end, I'm excited for, and maybe you can help enlighten me on this. I want to say that don't the outdoor crops start coming down pretty soon, or am I wrong about that?
Well, so it depends on where, but so right now, right in the middle of July, the first outdoor harvest happened, but that's not the photo. That's like light depth. So
Right.
what happens is they're covering their plants early to get them to flower. So they're in like a greenhouse and they cover it in black plastic or a big black tarp, and it blocks
Okay.
out the sun at like 8 p.m. And so the plants think it's, autumn and flower. And so those are coming down, as well as any auto flowers that were grown. Auto
Okay.
flowers are done, but the main harvest is going to start flowering uh, anywhere from now until about August 15th. The plants will start flowering, and then the main harvest is anywhere from September 15th through November 15th.
Through around November. So I've got a minute to wait then to see. I was curious how, with all these outdoor grows out here, if it was going to cause the price to fluctuate, possibly in the consumer's favor. And I was just interested to see, kind of as a, what would you say, a hobbyist.
I would say that if the price fluctuates, right? So they cut their first autos and light dep on the 15th around there. So they've been drying it and curing it for 2 weeks. So it's probably going to be ready, if they do it right, which it sounds like a lot of people in your state are. It'll be ready for consumption around August, 1st to the 15th. So that should be, if the price, if there is a glut from a midsummer like light depth harvest, you're going to see it in like August.
Excellent.
I would say that would be my opinion, just based on like the ebb and flow of cannabis farms here in Oregon.
I am woefully ignorant of how they do here. I know that the climate here is supposed to be decent for it, but I couldn't tell you like the months and stuff.
Yeah. Well, I think that mostly when plants flower depends on light.
Right.
And so a lot of it can be, how much light it's exposed to during the day. So when the days get shorter, it triggers the plants to flower. So I think that it's mostly due with how much sun you're getting during the day.
Just the
So
changing of the seasons.
yeah, so y'all are a little further south, so maybe that's a little less pronounced, or maybe not. So I don't know when your plants start flowering. I think y'all are a little further south than I am. I'd have to look.
That gets into a side of the topic I'm so bad at. I'm barely aware that it's like 9 or 10ish your time now. That's like the extent of my knowledge on that kind of stuff.
Oh yeah. But when we're talking about like light patterns, we're also talking about like, north, south. I'm gonna piss someone off because I'm gonna call a latitude wrong or something. So I think so latitude's going this way. So lines of longitude going north south. The further north you are, like Alaska, it has like long, like 18 24-hour days because it's all the way up
Right.
north. Well, the further south you go, the less variation between like the lengths of day during the year there is. So I wonder how that affects cannabis flowering. That's what I was saying.
Interesting. I understand you now. That's a good
Okay.
question.
Yeah. Because I think it has a pretty intense effect on it. I just don't know to what degree. Like if y'all are like, 10 degrees south, is that, a month early? Is that a week early? Is that a day? How much does it matter? You know what I mean? That would be interesting.
It would be. Is something else. Do we talk about, whenever we had you on our show, do we talk about the tumbleweeds before?
Oh,
Okay,
yes.
I'm looking forward to the tumbleweeds as well.
So the tumbleweeds. So could you explain to that for people on the maybe not in the Oklahoma scene, don't know what those are?
So in Oklahoma, kind Bagseed Chronicles listener, we have really nasty winds. It was the cause of the Dust Bowl. In agriculture was the cause of that too, but the winds exacerbated things. We also have a lot of outdoor cannabis being grown, and around this time, if you go to the cannabis related subreddits that are set in Oklahoma, you'll see a ton of posts of people being like, I was in Dollar General and I found this, and it'll just be a picture of a dude holding a giant stalk of weed that blew off somewhere because the wind just steals people's plants.
That's crazy. And we didn't talk too much about, we talked about it a little bit, but I think what we were talking about when it mostly was relation to weather. Like extreme weather can wreak havoc on an outdoor cannabis crop.
Oh yeah.
I mean, it's just like any other agricultural product.
We just have the downside of having, on top of it, the crazy heat and stuff, those vicious winds.
Well, and I've always been curious about like the different types of pests y'all get out there.
That is one. I know at the very least we get fungal gnats and spider mites.
Yeah.
I
I
don't know
think
if those are.
that's universal where anywhere where cannabis is grown, you're going to find fungus gnats. You're going to find bud worms, or basically tomato hornworms that'll get into the plant, and then I'm like cabbage moths, stuff like that. And then you're gonna find the spider mites everywhere. I don't think you can, if there is commercial cultivation, the spider mite is there.
Oh man, bringing the ecosystem with it.
Oh yeah, and I will say that ever since hemp became big to cultivate in Oregon, and this is not a dig on hemp, this is just how a target rich environment works for pests, right? They brought in hemp, they were growing these big fields of hemp, and the first year they grow hemp and every year after has been like pest city, way worse than it ever was.
So you're saying the bugs missed the first grow even on hemp?
Well, I think that there's so much cannabis growing out there that it's way easier for a pest who's local to my area, to specialize in cannabis, and after a few generations to really learn to specialize to attack cannabis, as because hemp is cannabis. So the more cannabis that's cultivated, the more pests you're going to have that target that plant because it exists in the ecosystem more.
That's fair. That makes sense.
And so I'm not complaining about hemp cultivation. I'm just saying the more, like, it's like if you were the only person in your neighborhood that grow tomatoes, you might have a pest problem every now and then. But if everybody grows tomatoes, you are going to have pests. Yeah.
I mean, yeah, that's just nature. That makes perfect sense.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for coming on to the Bagseed Chronicles. Evan, is there anything you want to say to our audience before you get out of here?
Thank you all for listening. Dig, thank you very much for having me on. It was a lot of fun. You're my first solo podcast like this, so thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you for coming on. Where can they follow your podcast? On Instagram or?
Oh yeah, I always goof this up on the show, so let me see if I can get it out here. It's smokinokiespod.com for the site. Our Instagram is at smokinokiespod, and then we've got a Reddit that we're trying to get going, which is /r/smokinokies. Those are our big three.
And you can also find Smokin Okies wherever you find podcasts.
Right, those places too.
All right, guys. Thanks for coming and listening to me and Evan talk, and let's overgrow the world. Thank you for listening to Bagseed Chronicles. You can contact me on Instagram at Uncle Dig or at my email, uncledig4@gmail.com. The producer of the music found on this podcast is Chad DeVilliers. He can be found on YouTube at Ukuleles Are Stupid and on Instagram at Chadwick Enterprises.